Yes, I was muted. It happens to me often. Hello, once again, to those of you who are out there living and loving life in the red world of complexity that we might call the beta verse. Kind of weird to think about that if we do, but yes, hello, good now. My name is Ryan Erickson. I am here to celebrate what it is like to be in a world of complexity and human potential, bereft of all of those things that are dead and killing us, much like incentive systems in corporations. And what we might think of those is a topic that we're going to explore today with my friend and colleague, the lead artist of Red 42, Mr. Niels Flagging. Hello, Niels.
Hello, Ryan. Good to see you. By the way, I'm not the lead artist. There is also Silke Hermann, right? We cannot forget her. We are more like a
Oh,
duo, and with you a trio, right? With you, including you, Ryan. But we
indeed.
are like a band, more like a band than like a solo artist. But it's okay.
Well, okay, so I should not the lead artist. You know, yeah, whatever.
And
So I get it, huh?
yeah, it's not no big deal. We corrected it. It's good to talk with you. It's the first time we're doing this kind of session, and we are both in the Americas, right?
Yes, judging by the visage, the great visage behind you, where might you be in the world at this moment, Niels?
Yes, we Silke and I we traveled to Sao Paulo last week, and now we are in Rio de Janeiro and having a few meetings here as well with colleagues
Hmm.
and business partners around Red 42 and Comenius. So, yeah, outside it's not sure already 30 degrees Celsius. I think the lovely neighborhood of Ipanema in Rio de Janeiro. That's why I'm locating. That's why the pump. It's not fake. The background is not fake.
So yeah, that is not a Zoom background for
No.
those of you, or a restream background, because that's what we're doing this in. Um, at the risk of singing either the Duran Duran song or the classic "Girl from Ipanema" by Antonio Carlos Jobim, um, I would like to steer us. Oh my God, steering! Oh my God, to
It's fitting with the topic, right?
well, yeah, it is. The one of the core pieces of the Beta Codex and the principles and laws is the idea of relative targets. And one of the three works, the system approaches, open space beta, cell structure design, and relative targets.
Yeah.
Um, Relative targets being the system of performance for an organization, right? That
Yes.
we in beta consulting put forward as um, a way to
And
get
for
rid of
organizations,
incentive.
it's very important, right? All organizations should have relative targets, right?
Yes,
Yeah. But
and
what is it?
well, and why?
And
Why
why?
are relative and what's the distinction? We talked about this a while
Yes.
back, but I have some more questions that came up. There's a distinction between what what organizations in the Western world, whatever, have now are these fixed targets based on this. You drew a picture, and again, I would bring it up, but there's strategy, and then there's a fixed performance contract in the middle,
Yes.
and then there's these two circles and the fixed contract
Yes.
in the middle of it that we're bound to, that as employees and members of a corporation are bound to. What's the problem with that? That's been the case since Taylor, Ford, all this stuff. Why is that so evil?
Yes. By the way, the concept you just mentioned, the concept of fixed performance contracts versus relative performance contracts, with
Yeah.
so much better. This is really something that it's phrasing. The wording comes from the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable, right? This distinction between fixed performance contracts, which are hierarchical internal contracts between, let's say, managers and individuals, around fixed performance meetings targets that it's about meeting targets that are previously negotiated, usually, or set, as we say,
Defined
and
based on yes,
on
the
whatever,
of
on
leadership.
God's will or epiphanies of top management or
Mount
clear strategy.
Olympus, right?
whatever, or consulting firms spitting out some numbers that are then driven down, broken down into. So fixed performance contracts are this. They represent this idea that managers have to steer the organization, control everybody, break down targets, silo them down into the organization to steer and to. Of course, the idea behind that is without targets, people will just not work. Performance will not emerge, which is ridiculous, right? In a way, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't think we have to be too serious about this matter because it's an old topic that it should be totally clear to everybody by now. But that fixed targets, fixed performance contracts cannot work in a world of complexity and so on and dynamics. But even though it should be conceptually clear, almost all organizations cling to that. I mean, today, not sure if you've seen, there's news about Bayer, big company, pharmaceutical chemical company, and they want to break free from too much hierarchical layers, too much steering and bureaucracy. And of course, they should combine this with a move from fixed performance contracts to relative performance contracts. I hope it will happen there on the corporate level as well and everywhere in the organization. So the insight is not new. Today we are not discussing a new insight, a new thing. Last week we talked about new research, but this is really, it should be clear to everybody by now that budgets and fixed targets and plans are dumb in a world of complexity. But it's not clear at all.
Right? Not clear. And I think this also, I was trying, when I talk about the BetaCodex with people and the system approach, when I typically get to the concept of relative targets, that usually is like it kind of, it puts a block. I'm like, what do you mean managing performance with, ridiculous.
Managing performance without managing it, right?
Without managing. And what I was trying to, I think you and I talked about this as we came to the title here was, what is a way to say very specifically what this is about? No plans, all performance, right? And what kind of plans are those plans? I mean, at a small level, there's a need to have an idea of what you are prepared to do in the moment and going forward, a directionality. The idea of a financial plan that we call budgeting, beyond budgeting, what is happening. So the idea of, well, budgeting, money allocation that's how an organization creates its authority structure. Because you have, there's money at the top, and you get this much, you get that much, and you get this much because you have this many people. All this kind of that creates the internal rat race. So in order for me as a manager to have more authority and to climb, a sign of that, a signal of that, is how much budget I get, right? How much money I get.
Yes.
And this idea is that it's baked into, oh, my budget is huge, I've got a lot of power, and maybe that's subconscious. 'Cause I'm not casting aspersions on humanity, but there's a feeling of, oh, I have a lot of resources that I can use to orchestrate and direct. So, well, if you get rid of that for a manager, and this comes up often, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to? That's the frustration I hear. That's a mental block that I think is important to try and get through.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the question comes up every time we talk about beta, or every time we talk about decentralization or cell structure design. The question comes up implicitly or explicitly. The question comes up, but how to run this, right? How to do this? How to make sure the numbers get there? How to make sure that performance will be good or better or superior? And I would say, let's make a step back first. We often talk about cell structure design in our little series here, and in a way, cell structure design and relative targets are two sides of the same coin. If you want to have a decentralized organization that's based on team performance, not command and control, but on decentralized responsibility and authority and team autonomy, then the way to get to that is, on one side, cell structure design, and on the other hand, relative target. So these things go hand in hand. They are inseparable. A decentralized structure and an appropriate performance system. And relative target says, okay, it's the opposite of command and control, of course. But in command and control, what does it employ or deploy in terms of performance systems to keep people controlled and steered and at bay? It uses budgeting, planning, individual target setting, plan actuals, variance analysis, intense cost management, right?
Yes.
So those individual bonuses, for example, and performance appraisal. And these are just 8 things, and there are more. Like OKRs are the same thing, by the way. They are just a variant of individual targets or top-down target setting of some kind. So there are the hipsterized methods like these. There are many shades of these performances. But those elements are fairly common. You find them in most organizations, especially large organizations. You find them all, right? So command and control performance management is it's known to us all. We know how it works. We know the mechanics. And now to say, okay, relative targets doesn't require budgeting or annual planning. You shouldn't do cost management, which is a very Deming-ish idea, right? You should not have allocations of cost or investments. You should not have, did I mention individual targets? You should not have plan actuals variance reporting, but over time and comparing teams with each other, league tables and so on. This is very counterintuitive until today, but there's a whole world of relative targets. Relative targets is not just about the targets, right? We should maybe mention this. Relative targets is the name of a holistic, so to say, performance system, system of performance systems in a way. Can deploy. Are you unhappy with this? You seem unhappy.
No. That's. I was trying to think. It is a system because there are particular parts of it, and they are. It's the relationship between the nodes of a system. Like this.
Yes, and there is a concept overview, right? We should mention that. www.relativetargets.com. There you find the concept overview. We are not just talking vaguely about something here. That it's a open source social technology that was published 3 years ago, I think. By but it has long roots. It's explained on the website I just named, relativetargets.com. You will find something about the history, which goes back to beyond budgeting, to social technical systems, and so on.
Exactly. And the concept overview, again, one of those things that we talk about, the 12 principles of the BetaCodex, there are 10 additional principles that are articulated in the relative targets concept overview. And that's kind of the organizational view, and there's team-based relative targets. So it's
in a way,
not just
happen at 2 levels, right? The organizational level and the team level.
Yes.
No other levels. So no business unit level, no individual personal targets. Relative targets only know 2 levels: the team and the whole. Of course, team.
And this also leads me into the idea of you mentioned league tables in there. That is for us ugly Americans in the world. So this is just like division or conference standings, right? This is the idea of that there are teams who are within themselves performing and having a unit of high performance and competing against themselves within a larger league or market, like the National Football League division competition. And I mentioned that because the league tables is this internal there is still a competitive spirit, but there's a difference to the kind of competition that we're talking about. Is that this collegiality, this I think you talked about sportsmanship. About that, and
because some folks, if you mention league tables, it immediately smells like command and control stuff, right?
It does. There's only one winner. There's only one winner, but that's
and that's not the case in a relative targets league table at all. Maybe we should clarify briefly. The
Sure.
history of league tables in organization. I mean, maybe the hate of league tables, or we shouldn't call them league tables. We should call them hacking orders or so. Jack Welch in the 1990s, I think, was the one
Oh, the
prominent general.
get rid of the bottom 10. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Jack Welch and others at the time had those. I wouldn't call them league tables. How are they called?
Rankings. The
Yeah,
rankings.
rankings. Personal,
Stack
individualized. Yes, exactly. And in Jack Welch's time, this even came along. You just mentioned it with the command that the bottom 10% should be fired, which is like I cut off a couple of limbs every month from my body. It's a ridiculous.
My right foot's not doing it. That one's got to go. Sorry, right foot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So league tables and relative targets are totally different. They are not about people. Never, ever, ever. In relative targets, there is no individual targets, no individual measures, none of it. That's very important. It's key. It's a cornerstone of relative targets. No individual measuring, because individual performance does not fucking exist.
That's a whole other thing. So the idea of individual to individual competition, right? So that is
not in beta.
It is abolished. That would be abolished from an organization that is fit for complexity.
It must be abolished from an organization. Yeah. Any beta transformation, individual target setting, individual measures must be driven out, must be eliminated for good, right? So what happens is you have team measures and team competition. And how do you make sure that that isn't made toxic? There's one, and there's what would you say? How what's an additional thing? First, the league tables in relative targets are not individual, not about individuals, but about team. And the second important thing, what would you say?
Well, they're not individual, team based, and
what can you not do with them, or what should you do with them, with the measures that you might rank in league tables in relative targets? Any idea? What should managers do with them, with these rankings? You might have 600 teams, right? A ranking of 600 teams performing in the cost-income ratio or something like that, or income cost, or whatever it is. Yeah. So there would be a ratio with percentages, and you would rank.
Oh, there's compensation. Well, there's participatory compensation, profit sharing, right? That's part of me.
What should you avoid? That's the first question I think that we should mention. What can you not do as a manager looking at your league tables?
Sanctions. You don't fire people because of it. Yeah.
No bonuses for the top performing teams and no punishments for the low performing teams. No reaction at all. Relative targets league tables are not for managers to do something and to act upon them. They are for teams themselves to act upon them. So one shall never reward or publish based upon league tables. If there is a reward, it can only be symbolic. There's this great case, I describe it in one of my German speaking language books. Ahlsell, a company that in Sweden that has been a beta organization for 40 years, I think now. Ahlsell, a retail organization, retail company, like they have like DIY markets, tooling markets and so on. Big shops.
Yeah, home improvement kind of stuff. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure, but building stuff. Yeah, building materials. So at Ahlsell, they have these team rankings, and the only thing that the winning team, there's one winning team every month, they get something. Bunch of roses sent to their homes. Apparently, I'm not sure if they still have this, but they had this 20 years ago. At least they had this system. So because ROS, rose in Swedish, the word
ROHS, okay.
ROS, that's the way it's written in Swedish. Right? It's the same return on sales. It's the same as rose. So for the best performing team in return on sales gets a bunch of roses sent to their homes.
There you go.
Only reward the winning team gets. It's highly symbolic, of course, right? The question is not one of value, it's just of recognition and symbolicism in a way. So in relative targets, they're never the rankings or measures or targets are never individual. They are always team based, and There is no reward or punishment for performing well as a team or badly or mediocre or whatever as a team. The idea is not that of commanding, steering, controlling from the top, but of teams improving all the time. It's very, very Deming-like, right? Very lean idea. It's the perfect performance system for lean organizations. Every organization that wants to be lean or agile should have relative targets, performance systems, of course. Maybe I talked too much today.
No, not at all. There's so much there. The idea also of the fixed targets and the plans to actuals and centralized planning, this idea of remote control, right? So you're trying to remote control these teams with, hey, here's the plan, go do the plan.
Yes.
And I saw this, and again, if I watch or listener to this, if sometimes these things just that they go over your head, for me, even going back into the white papers and the books and the essays just to kind of refresh, and I found a picture that I just loved. I think it was the incentive dip, right? There is that the base performance, and then there's the range of bonus, and then there's the ceiling, right?
Yes.
That we have that the and again this graphic, I'm trying to explain it, can't explain the graphic. Go to the Making Performance Work white paper and take a look at that.
This graphic, by the way, it should be mentioned, it is from an article by Michael Hammer, who produced a lot of terrible stuff.
Hammer and Champy. We kind of crapped on Hammer and Champy a while back.
Maybe
it was Hammer.
Yeah, I think it's by Michael Hammer. Anyway, it's from a white paper, I think by Michael Hammer from the early 90s, in which he says, in which he scientifically explains with this fantastic graphic that if you have a fixed performance system, you have a performance floor and a performance or a ceiling in a way that you dictate, and the target is in between. So between the floor and the ceiling, you have a progression, so to speak. So people who receive those targets are incentivized to either hit the bottom, decrease the performance, or manipulate it up to maximize, depending on their optimism or pessimism about the possibility of reaching the target. So
as soon as I hit the bottom, whoop, I'm done, right?
Soon as you think I cannot reach the good target, which would be here, right? If I cannot reach it, fuck it, I go to the bottom, and then the next month I will push, for example, results or sales or whatever it is to the next month's performance. So I will. Michael Hammer beautifully shows that once you have fixed targets in the organization, people will always be incentivized, always, regardless of the size or dollar amount of the incentive. People are always incentivized to manipulate the system, to game or rig the system, and that creates a huge body of huge investment in energy by everyone in the organization to make this numbers game work all the time. So in a way, every fixed target that you give out creates, it terrorizes people.
Disincentivization, right?
Yeah, but it incentivizes people to actively rig the system and manipulate it. Only if they are totally dumb or totally passive. But if they are somewhat active and perceptive, they will always manipulate the system to rig their bonuses and their target level achievement levels.
You're not showing them a way of perform that. Oh God, there's the quote about people.
That's beautiful.
Will learn how.
Yes, a tool.
Well, people will learn how to game the system.
Is a crime, like that, right?
Do you want me to pull the? Yeah, I got to pull the pink book out.
A target without a method is a crime. That's very Deming. Yes, what would Deming? That's all in there. Why you should never have. Yeah, by the way, Deming, of course, in a way, if you want to figure out the dawn of relative targets, that would probably be Edward Deming, because he understood it way back, in the 1950s and 60s. He understood that all target setting is immediately and inevitably toxic. That's why he says things like a bad system will beat a good person every time. That is highly related to performance management systems. Yeah.
because I think that a person who is within an incentive system isn't learning what performance means, or endeavoring, again, making an assumption here, endeavoring to create value. That the learning is, how do I navigate the system? I become great at navigating the system, because that's the incentive. That's what I'm supposed to do, right?
It becomes a
And
world in a way. A fixed target makes your world being about the target and not about the performance behind the target. In a
well,
way, every fixed target comes in the way between the person, the individual, and the work, the value creation. Yeah.
it slows a person down when you relieve the pressure of, and this is an interesting thing too. But well, when you relieve the pressure of hitting bonus, where's how do I know? Well, oh, so I don't. What am I here for? What am I shooting for? Right, shooting. Um,
Yeah, interesting, right?
that oh I think the other thing that came from the graphic to the idea of this, if we're always, if there's a piece of our
By the way,
if our piece
name
of
of
our
the guy,
capacity is
the name of the guy is not Michael Hammer. Michael Jensen, that's the name. Sorry for misquoting. Michael
okay.
Jensen is the guy who wrote this paper with the top of the ceiling on the floor. Sorry for interrupting you. Right.
Oh, no, that's okay. I think the deal.
Yeah.
So we talked about the dip in
Yes.
the range,
Yes.
floor, ramp, ceiling,
Floor and
but
ceiling thing.
with relative targets, you have there's continual ramp up,
Yes.
because the numbers are telling too. Because if say, hey, we have our plan is 21% of versus, oh gosh, I'm trying to draw the comparison. But if you end up with the plan, if you beat plan, you may make it to 23%. Oh my gosh, we beat plan. We got here and here. But in the marketplace, the people that your company should actually be competing against, they're at 40 or 50% of your plan. So
Yes.
what your plan is ridiculous. Your plan is actually hampering your performance. I think that was, at least when I read through it, that's when one of the puzzle pieces came together. And it's like that the having a fixed target, it's limiting your ability to comprehend the possibilities, and it's
Yes.
internalizing the focus on this
Yes.
internal competition, single competition, versus as a team, our competition is out there, and
Yes.
that competition in the marketplace to serve the people we want to serve better, and to create value for them better, that should be an infinite game. That shouldn't
Yes.
necessarily be the game that we're playing inside in order to get our bonus. Our,
Very well
my
put on
bonus.
that. Yes. And a relative target system forces everybody to take an outside view, an external view, while fixed target systems, budgeting, etc., fixed performance contracts create an internal orientation. Yeah, they create an inside focus. Yeah.
And
And
this
that's
is the same.
inevitable in command and control. It's always internally looking at the inside world predominated by plans and predictions and so on about
This
performance, which
is
is a
this.
terrible thing.
Well, this goes exactly into resource allocation. Exactly into it,
Yes.
because so our resource allocations determined by a push from the top and pushing out.
Yes.
So here's the resources, you get some, you get, as opposed to here's the resource, the financial resource that is in the market, that comes in through the periphery in the cell, and that the and it's a pull, it's a market pull instead of management push. And
Yes.
that's, and the idea of, and this flipping, this cell structure design plus the relative targets, that is the way to articulate that happening, putting those pieces together. And
Very well
because
put. Very
there's
innovative. Yeah.
I was going to say, there's a lot of talk in the agile space, and I think in the lean space as well, about pull versus, but we want to have a pull system. right? Like pull based on, pull the cards off
Sure.
pull the Kanban cards off and do that.
Sure.
But
Yes.
this is what talking about in this environment. This is really making sure we're talking about market pull. That there's the customer demand drives the resource allocation as opposed to
Yes.
a fiefdom kind of thing. So yes, you were saying.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You summed up so many important points about relative targets. Yeah, in a way, resource allocation is a command and control concept, and it in beta or in decentralization or in relative targets, it gets substituted by this idea that let's call it spending, or investment is based on value creation matters and topics, and it's paid for. Investments are paid for by the periphery, and not planned. Investments, for example, are not planned in beta by managers. And I like to talk of this investment pie. Yeah.
Mhm.
The discussion that most organizations have, that once a year somebody defines how big the pie is. Let's say 40 million investment, and then everybody jumps at the pie and tries to get a bigger slice. IT and production and whatever departments you have, everybody wants a piece of the pie, and so you slice the pie. But both the size of the pie it's pulled out of a hat.
It's
Slicing allocation, it's just about power. It's a power play thing, and not guided by value creation or need or urgency or market demand. It's not about that. It's all these games, investment planning as well, are about internal power and fiction. So in relative targets at Handelsbanken, for example, you would see that very well. There is no debate about annual investment budgets, but of course there is a debate between how much does the periphery, the branches, how much money do they want to invest in IT systems when the proposals come up. So you do not allocate budgets or invest money in a beta organization. You put the proposals on the table, and then you debate, do we want to invest in this or that or the other investment, all of it? What does that cost? What consequences does that have for our internal value creation accounting, for our internal pricing? What consequence does this have for our client, for our profitability, and so on and so on? And that can and should never be done once a year. It should be done on an on-demand basis, as late as possible. Invest decisions should be made as late as possible, which is another principle of relative targets.
Yeah. Because the waiting is the hardest part, right?
Yeah. For anxious alpha command and control managers, especially.
Yes. That was a Tom Petty reference for those of you out there.
Okay. I hadn't got this. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned one piece of this that is also a mystery to many when they think about what might be possible or what a beta organization looks like, is that the traditional accounting that happens, accounting and reporting and external reporting and all this kind of stuff, is, well, how do I, as a financial manager, as a controller, for example, how do I wrap my head around making sense of the numbers in this different world? We talked about value creation accounting at one point, and that's whether that may be a whole topic for another show to go forward. But there is a flip that happens in the system, and then in our 90-day beta cycle, open space beta cycle, openspacebeta.com. Yes, that accounting needs to change along with performance management, along with, once you get rid of budgeting,
along with the structure,
along with the hierarchy and the functional divisions. Okay, how do I account for this? How do I show other people that my team and that we, as our team, that we are performing well? And as an organization, what do we say to the capital markets, and how well are we performing?
Those are two different questions, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, they're definitely two different questions. So, but there's the idea. I think that the issue is, well, there's accounting, reporting, internal and external. So there's four issues.
Yes. Now I get it. Yes. The whole reporting in a way, relative targets means reinventing reporting completely.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And
And
yes, internally
what?
it means moving away from, let's say, the cost center profit center attitude, or the idea. For example, when I work with clients, I usually, uh, not often, I always ask them, okay, how many cost centers, profit centers, and so on do you have? Or if you talk of profit centers, how many profit centers do you have? And usually they say something like, well, we have 3 business units and they are all profit centers. And then I ask, okay, how many people do your profit centers have? If there are 3 profit centers, how many people are inside there? Well, 100, 200, 500, something like that. Yeah? So they have no transparency. Because if you have 500 or even 100 people in a so-called alpha profit center, what information does it give you? There are tons of salespeople, maybe, or whatever people you have, departments, and so on. But it doesn't give you any transparency about team performance at all, because 100 people are not a team. 100 people are a bunch, a group, or a herd,
Amalgam.
or whatever. Yeah, too many people. Yeah. So cell structure design creates these functionally integrated mini enterprises or cells. And so in a cell structure, if you have 1,000 people, you have approximately, I shouldn't have used that number. If you have 700 people, you have approximately 100 cells.
100 cells. Yeah.
That's a little easier. So imagine you have a company with 700 people, 100 cells. If you have 7,000 people, then that's approximately 1,000 cells. Right. And for each and every one of these cells, you will have a profit and loss statement. That's one of them. It's part of the magic of a cell structure design and of relative targets. Imagine 700 people, 700 cells, and let's say 80 of these cells are in the periphery, just 20 are in the center. That means you will have 80 cells in the periphery that you can rank in a league table, right? That gives you an enormous amount of transparency, especially to the cells, because they will all have this information about their own performance and about the other cells' performance. So relative targets give you a huge, combined with cell structure design, it gives you a previously unknown level of transparency. They will all have profit and loss statements, their own income, their own cost, their own consumption, which includes salaries, what they consume from central cells, and what they consume from the outside market, like energy, for example, or rent. So this gives every cell a whole body of knowledge about their profitability and where it comes from or doesn't come from, right? And that
information is shared across in the entire organism made of cells, right?
Sure.
In the
Intelligent, yes, ideally, and we have seen plenty of these examples. Handelsbanken and die Drogeriemarkt, for example. Every cell, every branch can look at all the other branches' numbers as well. That creates a huge amount of transparency. So if they want to understand why other teams are performing better, they can see the numbers themselves if they want to. And then imagine that, okay, in such an organization, you have no plan actual variance analysis. You only have these profit and loss per team reporting. You have league tables. You can see the whole organization's performance, maybe compared to competitors in certain indicators. Or you can have, if you have an industrial organization, you might have plants, for example, industrial plants comparing certain benchmarks.
Plants and different functionally integrated units within a plant, because a plant's going to have 350 people and whatnot. Yeah. This also, okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, just to add, if you have a system like that with relative targets, profit and loss statements for all the teams in the organization, 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 teams, it doesn't matter. Once you have such a system installed without planning, without need for cost allocation, cost management, because teams will strive to become better all the time, right? They will drive out waste and probably work on improving value creation and performance overall. So once you have a system installed like that, you never have to go back to planning, target setting, adjusting, or cost management, because in such a system, everybody strives for improvement, right? You don't have to do annual resets because you don't have annual planning and budgeting and allocation. So, and you do not have an incentive systems, a troublesome, cumbersome incentive system. So you don't have to manage people's performance or punish them and bribe them all the time. All of this means the cost of such a system, running such a performance system, is very low, and the administrative cost of bureaucracy goes down.
When there's no win-lose rival risk competition, it's amazing.
That's another thing. Yeah.
It leaves a vacuum too. It's like, well, wow, what if? Now, well, and another piece that comes into this is, well, different people have different levels of skill in different domains,
Sure.
and each person's contribution is because we human beings in an organization, each person is a unique person, right? You pay the person, not the position, right? That's another thing. So how is individual payment determined? You have a fixed salary, but there are differences in salary based on responsibility within an organization and the capability to fulfill those responsibilities. That's a real thing. And in a beta organization, that happens at the cell level. It happens, well, again, you may have some examples of how it happens possibly outside the cells, but we're talking about mastery-based performance discussion agreements.
Yes, because a cell with, let's say, 7 people has to sometimes talk about, okay, how do we organize the work among us? Who's slipping into which roles? Where do we have to improve? Where do we have to learn? How do the 7 individual members can have a career and grow professionally? And so all these things need to be discussed within the cell and are discussed in every cell. At least once a year, they must be discussed, right? And also a salary increases, of course, must be discussed every year. But that's almost a compliance thing.
Well, and I think that, the compliance rules are, your mileage may vary depending on what part of the world you are in and the legal structures that surround that.
Yes.
It comes into the music thing happens again, is that, hey, if the drummer sucks, everybody knows the drummer sucks, and you have to have a conversation about that. And who I mean, that's that. Hey, man, you need to. We need this guitar part. You're not playing that part very well. It doesn't sound good, and that's not necessarily a discussion that you have in public unless you're in a toxic relationship with your bandmates.
You do not have it during a gig on stage, right?
No, but this is the socially dense conversation that you have when you are performing with each other. With each other, for each other. We're all in this to play this tune the best we can play it, so people will dance, people will buy the album, all that kind of stuff. And the other bit is, I think so. So music is my example. You put the Formula One pit team in the white paper as well. That if that practice and skill to completely refit the tires and gas up a Formula One car in 6 seconds, that takes some skill, that takes practice, and that if someone's not cutting it, that has to be a very frank and very adult conversation, right? So again, the topic I'm trying to get to, kind of moving around, is about performance evaluation, not done from top down, not done in order to serve rankings, but to be done, and I guess to be done by people in the periphery with mastery, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yes, and one of the drivers of performance that's naturally embedded in a relative target system is that you will have everybody looking at those results, at those profit and loss statements per team and for the whole organization. You will have everyone in the organization looking at the league tables and rankings and other performance indicators or comparisons, again, without planned numbers, without fixed targets and so on. But you will have everybody look at these actual numbers that come out of a relative performance system all the time, on the team level and the organization level. So that creates the condition for self-control. That's very important. It raises transparency in a beta organization. Every beta organization that has a relative target system has a much higher level of transparency than any alpha or command and control organization. The way cost management, key performance indicators that are common, and this are these targets that are existent in most alpha organizations. They only obfuscate performance, because they are based on fixed performance contracts, exaggerated forecasting.
Hey, we made plan. So get off our back. This organization said, and that's that's kind of fishy. Well, why would you be unwilling to share what constitutes what you're producing? Right? I can't. This is also this came up while you're talking, that when there are transparent cells with profit and loss statements, and those are visible, you have a much truer view of how an organization is performing.
Yes.
And they I was going to say, and kind of an apples to apples comparison.
Yes.
Again. So you're going to hop in there and you're inspired.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I always get so anxious and throwing in another.
Sure.
In a relative target system, you also get rid of this obnoxious concept of fixed cost. Of course, in the long run, there is no fixed cost. All cost is variable. But
yes,
in a relative target system, as you will have, and this goes for a cell structure design too. Let's look at an organization as a cell structure. There's center and the periphery. The center serves the periphery so that the periphery could serve the external client. Okay. But if you have this concept that, the center serves a cell in the center, serves a cell in the periphery, and there is a service that has a price that the center sells to the periphery, so to speak, then that means you do not have fixed cost. You don't talk in those dimensions of fixed cost and variable cost anymore. You only talk about value created. And that is a totally different and highly economical, highly entrepreneurial look at value creation accounting, let's say, or value creation and the cost that's attributable. It creates a whole different, and it's a very simple way of organizing cost management. Or cost management without the management. When I started working with the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable in 2003, so that was over 20 years ago. At the time, there was still in the 80s and 90s, there was a relatively popular accounting concept called activity-based costing.
Yep.
Have you ever heard of it? Not sure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Activity-based budgeting, activity-based costing, yes.
Yes, exactly. So those were very popular when I started with my Beyond Budgeting experience and as a director of the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable. Those concepts were very, very popular back then. At least conceptually, they were very popular, but they were highly laborious to set up. You had to do an enormous amount of calculation and cost accounting to get to these numbers. To specify the cost of an activity, it's very cumbersome, right? Because you have so many activities that you would have to calculate. Now, relative targets or value creation-based accounting works totally different. You only have to arrive at a price or cost. It's the same, really. Price and cost have to be the same. When a center sells something to the periphery, there cannot be profit in the center. So you only have to arrive at the cost of a service or the price of a service that the cell in the center sells to the periphery. And to get to those, and the center cell can only have, let's say, 4, 5, 6, or 7 services that it sells to the periphery. So that makes the whole cost accounting very, very intuitive, very simple, because costing by services is a very easy thing to.
It's not abstract.
It's not abstract. It's not so analytical. It's not analytical at all. You just have to figure out, okay, if we think we sell more or less this amount of services of this category, and this might be the price, and then you correct over time, because a center cell cannot have profit or loss. It should only break even. So over time, you learn what the price of specific services should be to break even for a center cell. And you only have let's say five products. So it's very simple to, and not very analytical to arrive at those prices.
And I think it's important to realize that if you're in a cost accounting mindset or system of cost accounting at the beginning of a 90-day doing cycle in an open space beta, that it's not going to be perfect in 90 days.
Yes.
And that we're in 90 days the expectation is not you must have break even in the center, and you must have all this stuff done. Now yes,
in place, the cost accounting system, the value creation cost accounting system should be in place, and the prices, the initial prices, but you're
setting prices, you are, and I think, and it feeds the transparency. If you've got the principle of transparency inculcated with a group of people, that it's not as if I'm going to say, you suck because I can't. It enables an adult conversation about actual business value created.
Yes, in a way, during the 90 days, the first cycle of that kind of internal pricing, internal markets, value creation accounting system starts. Only the first cycle, and then a company will usually go. Handelsbanken did that at the beginning of the 70s. They needed several cycles to learn more about this internal services system and how
balance,
pricing should work. So that requires a little bit of time. Still, to set up this system during the 90 days of transformation in open space beta is essential. You have to set up the system, get it started, and then a company will learn over maybe the course of 1 or 2 years how to best refine those services and the prices and
to work the system. possibly you're saying that you learn
to work the system to make it better, to make it let's say to ensure that cells will usually break even, because that's central cells have to break even. Periphery cells should make a margin. Center cells have to break even, and you do not get that right within the 90 days, of course.
Well, you may get it right in terms of that you are doing the right thing. You just suck at it, and that you've just learned how to. You were spending all your life playing cricket, and then now you go play basketball or move to golf. Well, that's an individual competition sport, so that's different. That's what
you're
but you're from playing golf to cricket, or exactly, move from golf to cricket. Wow. So this idea of real performance, let's get real with each other. And I again, reading through the notes and reading through the concepts and getting my head around it. This name of this book came up. Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. So let's talk about real performance. Talk about actuals to actuals. Talk about this is where we're going. Again, that use of the word "we" is very interesting. That we can talk about.
By the way, there are several other books that we might mention by other authors that are related to Ready-to Targets. For example, the Great Game of Business by Jack Stack, I think. Or there's a great book on open book management that's pretty readable. And there are a couple of beyond budgeting books as well that are good about relative targets. And these books you can find this curated list of book recommendations on the BetaCodex website in the books to read section. For those watching, you can also find the white paper that we continuously have mentioned, Making Performance Work. You can also find that through the website. And I think it's white paper
number 10.
Yes. So it's on the betacodex.org. dash or slash white slash papers. Yeah. So well,
Yes.
you can find it on the BetaCodex website. And what else? And there's a web page on relative targets that's under can be found under www.relativetargets.com. Right.
I was trying to put a link in the ticker, but I wasn't able to do it so fast. But it'll just look ugly. You can't click it on there. So
We
sorry.
might put it under the YouTube video.
YouTube comments.
So
Yes.
it's in the it will be findable under the YouTube video in the comments section.
Definitely. Well, as we land this ship, what? No plans, all performance. I think we've done a good job of going through the lovely river of dreams of relative targets. What would you like to leave our viewers in their respective nows with?
Yeah, maybe one thing. I think especially in the agile scene, even in lean, I think the economic side of these approaches has been undervalued, underappreciated, it hasn't been covered a lot. You know? So I think every leaner, every agilist should really look at relative targets. It's a straightforward approach to performance systems. In fact, I cannot think of creating lean or creating agile or beta without this economic dimension of performance systems. How will teams measure their performance? How will they measure progress? How will they evaluate their success, economic and otherwise? You need an organization needs a relative targets to get to that forward-moving lean system. That's why Toyota, Handelsbanken, Gore, Semco, and all these companies, the Rimac, they all have developed this kind of system. In fact, when we discovered the DM Rimac, huge retail company from Germany, when we discovered that case, we figured that they had developed an accounting, like value creation accounting system that was exactly like Handelsbanken's. Stunningly similar, right? A few different words, but exactly the same. Or take Burzog. When Silke and I heard Jos de Blok, the founder of Burzog, speak in Croatia a couple of years ago, he said, when we designed our performance system, we copied Handelsbanken systems. Imagine that. Create a healthcare service organization in the Netherlands, and you use the approach that a Swedish bank has used for 50 years. So this relative targets approach is very straightforward, very understandable, applicable in all kinds of organizations, from Toyota to Handelsbanken to Burzog. That should, I hope this makes clear, and it has so many advantages we discussed. It's also easy to operate, cheap to operate. It reduces all this overhead that in most organizations is dedicated to performance systems, the target setting, the bonus systems, and all this administrative, terrifying bureaucratic stuff. So all that goes away in relative targets. Take a look at it, relativetargets.com. It's open source, everybody can use it. Feel free to do so, and now go off and use it.
Go off and use it. No more individual incentives. Individual incentives kill performance. Pay the person, not the position.
Yes.
And let's get real, or let's not play. Actual to actuals. Let's do it.
This was lovely. Thank you for the conversation.
Well, thank you. And on to next week. In the future, we have some special guests that we will be bringing in from the domain of organizational development and change. I am very, very enthused about. That's a secret. We're going to be sharing that. Yes. And maybe a discussion next week about the myth of the status quo.
That's nice. I love that. Yes.
Possibly. All right, Niels.
Which is not the band. The band is real. Status quo, the band. The other status quos do not exist. Right?
Maybe not. But that I think we may have an interesting sense-making discussion about what each of us mean by that. And I think that'll be valuable, folks. And if if someone out there in the world has a topic that you would wonder how that's handled in a beta organization,
Oh, yeah.
you're always invited to message me on LinkedIn, message Niels on LinkedIn, post something, tag us. You know how to communicate on LinkedIn. So those of you who are watching it likely do. So, all right, my friend, we're going to land this ship, and you enjoy your time in Rio de Janeiro.
Thank you very much. See you very soon.
See ya. Ah, yes. Wonderful, wonderful. Boy, I love these conversations, and I hope you do too, who are you and whenever you're watching. Take care. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. Have peace, love, and music.